Are you a Canadian permanent resident who's looking to apply for Canadian citizenship in near future? If that is the case, then you've landed it at the right spot. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the eligibility requirements for Canadian citizenship and the process of applying for Canadian citizenship. So do watch the video till the end for all the details on this particular topic. Welcome back. My name is Hassan Shariq. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant based in the beautiful Canadian city of Mississauga. Through my various social media platforms, I make and upload videos on various aspects of Canadian immigration. So if that's of interest, do consider subscribing. Today's video is about Canadian citizenship, how to apply for Canadian citizenship, and the video will be divided into 4 broad categories. First, we'll have a look at the eligibility requirements for Canadian citizenship. Secondly, we'll look at the various ways of submitting citizenship application or how to apply. Third, we will have a look at the documents which are required as part of citizenship application. And lastly, we'll look at the sequence of events for how the whole process works. Now, if you're watching this video on YouTube, there are certain subcategories, and for each of the subcategory, there's a chapter made. So if you are interested in skipping to something that is of more interest to you, you can do that by clicking on that particular chapter. So first, let's have a look at the eligibility requirements for citizenship application. Now, one thing that I'd mention over here is that in this particular video, I will be talking about citizenship application for an adult, people between 18 to 54. Those who are not within these age brackets, they might have slightly different requirements. And if you have queries on that, you can post in the comment section and I'll be more than happy to answer. Now, there are 5 major eligibility requirements for Canadian citizenship application. First, and we'll talk about all of them in detail, but just to list, first, you must be a permanent resident. Secondly, you are required to prove language ability. Third, you must prove residency status within Canada equal to a certain number of days. So right now it is 1095 days, which is 3 years in last 5 years. Fourth, you have to show proof of filing taxes in last few years if you were required to file the taxes. And lastly, you have to pass what is called a citizenship test. These are the 5 broad requirements which must be fulfilled to proceed with your citizenship application, and now we'll have a look at each one of them. So the first requirement, as I mentioned, is that you must be a permanent resident. Now, this seems very simple and something that everybody would know, but this is important because those people who are in Canada, and there's a large number of people who are in Canada on other resident status, which are called the temporary resident status, such as like a work permit or maybe a study permit, they are not eligible to apply for Canadian citizenship. First, you have to move from that status to a permanent resident status, and only then you can submit your application. And also for those people who have a permanent resident status, you should not be under any kind of removal order. There shouldn't be any review on your immigration application. This can be because of an immigration application fraud. So your permanent resident status at the time of your application should be free of any kind of removal order or such immigration proceedings going against you. Secondly, there is the requirement for residency. Now, right now, and keep in mind that these policies can change quickly. So this is true as of right now, which is I'm recording this video on the 9th of October 2021. So the requirement is that you must have 1095 days of residency within Canada within a period of last 5 years from the date of your citizenship application. This is a very important aspect and this needs some explanation. So first of all, this 1095 days is to be counted from the date of your citizenship application. So if, say, for instance, you are submitting your citizenship application or plan to submit your citizenship application on 1st January 2022, you will look at 5 years before that and see if you have resided within Canada or you were present in Canada for a total of 1095 days. In terms of how to calculate these days, so if you were in Canada on any particular day, no matter for how long you were in Canada, that is counted as a day inside Canada and will count towards these 1095 days. So say for instance, you took a flight and you landed in Canada on 15th of January 2021. Now 15th of January will be counted as a day within Canada and will count towards these 1095 days. If you took a flight from Canada to somewhere else, like a country outside of Canada, that particular day will count within Canada as well, as long as on that date you were in Canada. So for people, there are a lot of people who have jobs where they have to travel to, say, maybe US, like maybe trucking and other people. So if they have spent any part of the day within Canada, that particular day is considered as a residency day within Canada. This aspect is also important in the sense that a lot of people confuse that you are required to have 3 years or 1095 days of continuous residency, but that's not the case. You have to accumulate it over a period of 5 years. So you could land in Canada, like if you land as a permanent resident and you land in Canada, you can stay constantly for 1095 days and be eligible, or maybe you stay in Canada and you stay for like 600 days, then you go away for a few days, you come back, those days that you're away will not be counted, and once you've accumulated it over a period of time, that's considered as a fulfillment of this requirement. One very important aspect that I like to highlight under this requirement is that for those people who've been in Canada on a temporary resident status, like there are students. So somebody came to Canada as an international student, they studied in Canada, and then they applied for their permanent residency and then are looking at applying for citizenship application. So your time spent as a temporary residence can also count towards these 1095 days. Each day that you spend in Canada as a temporary residence on a legal status will count towards half of a day towards these 1095 days, and the maximum that you could get away or get off is equal to 365 days or 1 year. So just for clarity purpose, if there's an international student who moves to Canada and stays in Canada, say for a 4 years bachelor's degree, and then they become a permanent resident and they want to apply for their citizenship application, they would only need 2 years of stay as a permanent resident since the day that they become a permanent resident, because they can use the previous study time as 1 year towards this residency. And one exemption which is there for people who are based outside of Canada but would still use that time as a residency for this requirement of 1095 days is if you are a Crown servant. So this means that if you're part of Canadian Armed Forces, or you're working for the federal or one of the provincial public services, and you're posted outside of Canada, in that case, and say for instance you're a permanent resident, in that case, serving as a Crown servant outside of Canada will still be considered as your time spent in Canada, and you can use that towards the residency requirement for your citizenship application. And this goes for the spouse of a Crown servant as well. So next up is the requirement to have filed your taxes for last 3 years. So If you are a resident in Canada, depending on which province you reside, you are required to file taxes to show your residency. As part of your citizenship application, you are required to provide proof of 3 years of taxation within the last 5 years. This is a very important aspect because a lot of people, like sometimes it's the case where one of the spouses is full-time working and the other spouse is not working and they have zero income and they think that they don't need to file a tax return. For your citizenship application, even if your income is zero and you don't have any owing taxes, you should file your taxes, because at the time of citizenship application you will be asked ask the question if you've submitted your tax returns, if you were required. Next up, a very important requirement, which is language requirements. And as I mentioned early on, we are talking about people who are between 18 to 54. There are certain exemptions for people who are not in this age range. To be eligible for citizenship requirement, you must show proof of language ability in terms of your speaking and your ability to listen. Now, Canada has 2 official languages, English and French, and you can fulfill this requirement in any of these 2 languages. And as I said, it is only required for your speaking and listening component. There's a lot of different ways that you can fulfill this requirement. What I will do is that all the different possible ways that are there, I will provide a link in the description of this video where you can click on that and see an article which will list all the different possible ways that are available. But generally speaking, there can be the various ways that there can be. One is through a language test. And for ease of understanding, because most of the people will be looking at English, if you're taking a language test, you're required to have a CLB 4 or above in the speaking and listening component. And if we're talking of IELTS, this is basically 4.5 in listening and 4 in speaking, so pretty easy. Other than the language test, there is also the possibility of fulfilling this requirement through proof of previous education, like degree qualifications from countries where the common language of instruction or the common language spoken is either English or French. So say for instance, if you started in United Kingdom in the past and you completed a degree over there, or if you've completed a degree from France, this could help you fulfill the requirements. Test for this requirement. And then there are certain language training courses which are offered within Canada. If you've completed one of those, you could still fulfill the requirement for language abilities. Moving on, the last eligibility requirement, which is actually part of the process when you submit your application, but it is an important requirement, is to pass a citizenship test. Now, the citizenship test, I'll talk about when it is done in the later section of the video in the sequence of events. But this is a test which is about how the Canadian political system works, the economy, the history, the geography about Canada. You will be asked to do a multiple choice exam where there will be 20 questions. You are required to achieve a score of 15 or above to pass this. And it is based on a study guide which is titled Discover Canada, the Rights and Responsibilities of Citizenship. I will put a link in description for those who would want to access this. With the test, the way it works is that if you fail this test once, you are given another opportunity. You can take the test once again. If you are not able to pass the second time as well, then there is the requirement that you meet a citizenship official and they discuss matters with you, and then they assess if you know, if you have the requisite language abilities, and if you know the Canadian system, society, the Canadian structures well enough to proceed further. So this brings us to the second section of our our discussion on how to apply for Canadian citizenship. And this section of the video will be about how to submit your citizenship application. So right now, there are two methods of submitting your citizenship application. Historically, it was a paper-based application, which predominantly still is the case. But now there are two methods. One, you can submit your application as a paper-based application. And the other is where now you have the opportunity to submit an online application. So let's have a look at broadly about the two different application systems. So with the paper application, it's simple. You go online on the Department of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship department. You click through and you get the document checklist and the application guide for citizenship application. You download all the forms. It's a few forms. Basically, the main form that is there is the citizenship application form. You fill that. Some of these forms are required to be filled online, like you do it on a computer. Once you do that, you have to validate, and then after validating, you will have to print them. And one important thing is that if you are doing the paper application, once you validate, there is a barcode which is generated and you put that on top of your application package. So you select the package, you fill it, you validate it, you print it, you attach the required documents. We'll talk about the required documents in a bit. You make that as a package. If it is a single application, just yourself. If it is a family application, you make that whole application package and you mail or courier it to the specific IRCC office. IRCC started off testing an online application system, and now since August 2021, they've allowed this option to anybody with certain requirements, but anybody who fulfills those requirements can submit an online application. So with the online application, the way the process works is that you go on the online citizenship application page. Again, the link will be provided in the description. You go in there, you create your account, and you create the account. Then you provide all the, it's a question-based form. You provide all the answers in there. Based on that, there are certain supporting documents that you're supposed to provide. You upload those documents, you make the online payment, you attach that, and at the end, you click submit. Once it's submitted, you will get an email confirmation that the application has been submitted. Now, in terms of the online application, the paper application, pretty much anybody can submit that. But the online application, there are certain requirements based on which you become eligible to submit online application. So online application, as I mentioned, that you have to create an account, so you must have an email address, or you create an email address. More importantly, it is only for adult applicants. So if you are applying for your child, or if there is a child who's part of the family application, then you cannot use the online application at this stage. So 18 years or above, you have to be applying for yourself only and not as a family application. Do keep in mind that if you wish to submit a family application, then you have to do it through a paper form. So one can submit an individual application, or you can send the whole application package as a family application, where all these applications are processed jointly, and then you get the opportunity to have the oath and all that process done, citizenship grant together. But with the online application, you can only do it for one person. It doesn't mean that a family cannot use the online application, but then they will submit individual applications for each family member. So say, for instance, if it's a couple, they'll have to submit 2 different applications for each of the spouse, and they will both be processed individually. So it's not that you will get all the like the citizenship test, or maybe the citizenship ceremony and stuff. that will not be, these two applications will not be paired together. So it has to be an individual. You cannot use a representative if you're applying an online application. So in terms of representative, it can be a paid representative like an RCIC or an immigration lawyer, or maybe somebody applying for a family member as a representative. In the beginning, I mentioned that crown servants can use their time spent outside of Canada serving Canadian government as a residency requirement. If that is the case, then you cannot use the online application at this stage. So this brings us to a very important section of our video on how to apply Canadian citizenship, and that is the documents required for submission. Now, broadly speaking, the documents that are required for the two different types of application are similar. And then there are certain documents which are required by every applicant, but there can be slight variations. So we'll have a look at various different kinds of documents one by one. So first of all, if you're applying through the paper-based application, as I mentioned, you go online, you get the whole application package, and there's a few forms to fill and some documents to attach. Now, if you are submitting the paper application, then the form that is used is called CIT 0002. So this is the form that you download, you fill it. It will ask you a lot of details, your personal details, what you've been doing in last 5 years, your addresses and all that sort of stuff. So this is an important documentation. You have to fill it with a lot of care. If you are submitting an online application, then you are not required to fill this form and upload it as such. Rather, the system will ask you all these questions one by one. You fill in the details, and that's how it's filled. But a piece of advice is that even if you're doing the online application, you should download the CIT 0002, fill it and print it, because all the details that online application will ask you is the same information that is there in this paper application form. By filling up this form, you will know what details you're required, because it's a lot of details, and this will give you an opportunity to list all that. And then once you're doing your online application, you can use that information on the CIT 0002 to fill your online application better. So online application doesn't require this form, but paper application, there is the application for citizenship to be submitted. With that, there is an important form or document that you have to provide as part of your application. That is the online physical calculator. Now, what I'll do is that I will provide a link in the description of the video. Again, there's going to be a lot of links. The 1095 days of residency that I mentioned earlier in the video, we have to prove that through this form or this document. You can create an account within this online calculator well before your citizenship application, and actually use it to count the days and know when will you meet the 1095 days requirement. So you create your account, and then what you need to do is that it will ask you a few questions. When did you become a permanent resident? Have you spent time outside of Canada as a crown servant? Was there a time spent in Canada as a temporary resident? And then it will ask you for all the trips that you've made outside of Canada during the eligibility period. That time will be deducted out, so you have to provide details that when did you leave Canada, when did you land back, which countries did you go to, what was the purpose of the visit. Once you finish all those questions and you come at the end, it will give you, and it will also ask you as to what date are you looking at submitting your citizenship application. Based on that, it will give you the exact time of residency that you have, and this will also provide you important information about the eligibility period. That eligibility period, the last 5 years, is the time which you have to use in your citizenship application at various places. So if you're doing the paper application, you fill up this online physical presence calculator, You print it and you attach it to your paper application package. If you're applying through the online application, you will save a PDF copy and attach it as part of your online submission. Then you are required to provide copies of your passports. Now again, depending on what form of application you're doing, if you're doing a paper application, the requirement now is that you have to provide colored photocopies, and these are to be for all pages in your passports during the 5-year eligibility period. For the online application right now, they don't ask for all these pages. It's just the biodata pages of your passports, and you just upload that. Moving on, I've already mentioned that the eligibility requirement requires you to provide proof of language proficiency. So for that, you need to provide a photocopy of one of the different ways through which you're proving your language proficiency. Then you have to provide photocopies of 2 personal ID docs. Now, this is where a lot of people get confused. These are supposed to be ID docs, government issued ID documents. They can be a Canadian federal or provincial government, or a government from your country of origin. Your passport can definitely be one of these IDs. Some other examples are maybe a driver's license, a foreign national identity card, a health card. These can all be fine. You have to provide 2 different ones. The important thing is that whatever ID you're providing, it must have your name, your photo, and your date of birth mentioned on it. Next up, citizenship photos. So again, it's a very standard thing for all the permanent residents who are in Canada. You go to any of these pharmacies or stores, you'll see citizenship photos. Just go to any of these photographers and get 2 citizenship photos made if you're doing the paper application. If you're doing the online application, then you have to have the same citizenship photo done in a digital format, because you have to upload it. If it is a paper application, because you are supposed to provide 2 of them, you are required to have it dated, stamped and signed by the photographer or the studio who are doing it. Normally they know it. If you just let them know that this is for Canadian citizenship purpose, they'll do it. The specs also. If you're doing the online application, because it will not be stamped and signed, do note all these details, because as part of your online application submission, the system will ask you to provide the name of the photographer or the studio where it was done, the address and the date that it was done. You are required to provide the fee payment evidence. The fee payment right now is done online. So even if you're doing the paper application or you're doing the online application, there is an online system. I'll provide the link in the description once again. For an adult, the fee is 630 Canadian dollars. With this, we pretty much are done with all the mandatory documents that are there. Next up, we have some documents which are required on a case-to-case basis. Now, for the police certificates, the way it works is that they look at your eligibility period, and it is basically in the last 4 years from the time that you are submitting your citizenship application. If you've not traveled outside of Canada at all, there won't be a requirement for a police certificate, because Canadian police certificates are not required at the time of submission of your citizenship application. But if within those 4 years from the date of your citizenship application, you have been in a country for a period of 183 days or more, then you are required to provide a police certificate from that particular country as part of your citizenship application. For a lot of people, this might actually be their country of origin, and they move to Canada to activate their PR right at the beginning from their country of origin. If that's the case, then you're not required to provide PCC from there. Then if somebody's had a legal name change once they became a permanent resident, this could be because somebody got married and they've had that change, or for some other reason they had a name change, a legal name change, then you are required to provide evidence for that. If you are applying for citizenship and your situation is that at this time you're residing outside of Canada, like somebody might have fulfilled the residency requirement and have now moved out of Canada, they're working or they're based, and they would want to apply for citizenship, then there is a separate form that you have to fulfill. Any documentation that you provide as part of your citizenship application, if it is in a language other than English or French, then you are required to provide certified translations for that, that document. So now we are in the last section of our video, which is about the sequence of events. Because a lot of people who maybe have plans to, say, once they submit their citizens application, go back to their home country or look for maybe a job somewhere else. So they want to understand how the process sort of works. So first of all, you will submit your application. It can be the online application, it can be the paper application. If it is the online application, once you submit, right away you will get a confirmation that your online application has been submitted. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this is not an acknowledgement of receipt. This is not an AOR. With the paper application, I'll explain AOR right after this. With the paper application, once you fill all the whole application package, put it in a courier envelope and send it, it goes there. Maybe you have a tracking, you receive that. Again, that's not acknowledgement of receipt. So these are the two ways of submitting it. So you submit your application right now, and these processing times can vary, but right now, the video being made on 9th of October 2021, right now it is taking about 3 months for IRCC to send you acknowledgement of receipt once you've submitted your paper or online application. So on any particular date that your application is submitted online or that it reaches the relevant IRCC office, there is a bit of a queue, there is a bit of a backlog. So it takes them time to reach your application, open it and have a look that all the required documents based on your situation are part of that application. Once they've done the review and they feel that all the required documents are there in the place, they will issue you an acknowledgement of receipt. Once you have the acknowledgement of receipt, which I mentioned is taking about 3 months at this stage, you will then be asked to appear for a citizenship test, the one that we talked about in the beginning. Again, the times can vary, but what IRCC website says, the average is about a few weeks from AOR, so it can be 4 to 6 weeks from AOR. So you do the citizenship test. Once you do the citizenship test, there might be a requirement to meet a citizenship official, and then they work on all the documentation that you've provided. Right now, the average processing times is around 12 months, and it is, in some cases, it takes more time as well. Once this whole scrutiny is done, they will invite you for an oath. If it is a family-based application, the whole family will be invited. If it is individual application, each individual will be invited for an oath ceremony where you do the oath. Previously it was done in person, now it's being done virtually as well. You do the oath and that's when you get the citizenship grant. So that is all for today on the topic of how to apply for Canadian citizenship. I am sure that there are certain aspects that probably I was not able to cover in as much detail. So if you have questions, do post them in the comment section and we'll be happy to provide you guidance on that. For those who are interested in using professional services for their citizenship application, do consider booking a consult session using the link provided in the description of the video, and myself or my colleagues at the firm will be more than happy to assist your application. Do consider supporting the channel by liking it, subscribing, and sharing it as well, because maybe some other people in your circle might benefit from the information in this particular video. So with that, I'll ask for a leave. Take very good care of yourself and your families, and soon I'll be back with another video on Canadian immigration. Till that time, take care and Allah Hafiz.